right, everyone, I'm excited to get started. Welcome for episode 86 of our Artez webinar series. We were just chatting earlier before we were getting started that we're excited to see that we're almost hitting the big 90s. Maybe we should have a party, balloons, cake, you know, that kind of thing. Maybe if you're in our 90th webinar, we'll have some kind of free giveaway. It should be kind of fun. Just some housekeeping items here. So, if at any point during the session you're having any trouble with the audio or video, please chat in the left on the chat box, and our amazing team, our executive producer of webinars, Ms. Karan Baladin, woohoo, will help you out there. If you have any questions during the webinar, please, of course, chat them in the left on the chat box, and I will moderate them and give them to our presenter. And, of course, because we're super interactive here at Artez, please feel free to tweet our questions. So on Twitter, we are Artez Online, so tweet during the webinar all you want. And our amazing presenter today, Karen Luttrell, did I pronounce the last name correct? Correct. Woohoo! Yay, Karen! Is also on Twitter. She is at Karen Luttrell, so her name's up there on the screen, so no problem at all. So please tweet during the webinar and get as interactive as you like. And of course, we want to remind you too that this session is being recorded. And we will be sending you an email with a follow-up that will have a link to the video and the slides. So the number one question we always get is, can I get the slides? The presenters are so great. Yes, you can. You'll get the PDF, and you'll get a copy of the recording. One last thing before we get into today's presentation, I just want to thank all of you who came out to Artez Interaction 2012, our 6th year. If you were there last Thursday, it was a fantastic event. We know that there are still, if you follow the hashtag on Twitter, it's up there on the screen, ArtezTO, you can still see some of the insights from our presenters. We had Facebook, Huffington Post, Google, Rethink, Blue State Digital, so hot right now with the elections in the U.S., Sick Kids Foundation, and Leukemia Foundation of Australia. We had tons of great speakers. And so if you're interested in that or you want the presentations, you did attend and you would like the presentations, check out artez.com for all of that great conference stuff. Okay, well that's enough Artez stuff. Now we're into Karen stuff. Welcome, Karen. I'm really excited to, we're going to be talking today about e-newsletters and e-communications for your charity or nonprofit organization. It's a really hot topic. And we know that a lot of you are asking more questions about how to really optimize your digital communications, how to talk to your supporters, how to talk to your donors. And in the run-up to holiday, this is going to be a really big topic. So Karen, her bio is up here too. So will you be at AFP Toronto this year? Are you heading down?
Hopefully, yes.
You might be. Okay, cool. You're also putting together Professional Writers Association events, which is pretty cool too. All right. Okay. Very, very well done. And you can always check out her website at luttrellcommunications.com. So Karen, I'm going to pass off to you. High five. Here, welcome.
Thank you.
A high five. I hope you could hear that on there.
Well, thank you for having me today. I'm very excited to be here and to be talking about e-newsletters and the path to donor happiness. So we all want our donors to be happy. So. Okay, so I want to start this by talking about why I think e-newsletters are so important, and I think this slide really says it. Donor retention, I think all of us who are working in fundraising know that this is an extremely important issue. There was one article I was reading, and they were talking about a survey where 1/3 of the charities inspired a second gift from at least 4 out of 10 new donors. So when you look at that, what they're saying is 2/3 of the charities they surveyed were losing at least 60% of their new donors without getting a second gift. So that's staggering when you think about the amount of time and effort and money and work it goes into getting new donors on board. It's such a lost opportunity, and so important for all of us working in the sector to be really working on building strong relationships once we get people excited enough to give a gift to keep them excited and in touch and engaged. And e-newsletters, I think, really do offer us a good opportunity to help with that. I think they can be a very effective part of your donor retention plan. I am going to emphasize the word part. You'll just notice I've underlined that. And I'm just going to say, I think we all know that we need to do very important things like sending prompt thank you letters and getting the tax receipts, making personal touches with phone calls. These are all important too. I would never suggest that an email newsletter could replace those things. What a good regular email newsletter can do is really boost your efforts and help you sort of beat those numbers we saw in that slide in the first survey. And the reason I think they can be so effective as a part of your donor retention plan, emails are immediate, right? They can go out quickly. There's no wait for printing and mail. Because of that, you can do them more frequently and it's affordable to do them. It's easy to personalize them, which helps you build a connection. And there's actually something you can do in your email newsletters that you just can't do in a print newsletter, no matter how good an example it is of a print newsletter. You can include links to rich media. You can put in audio and video in there. You can really show the story through actual people talking in a way that you can just never do in print. So the e-news can be a very effective tool. So we're going to talk about sort of 4 steps that I think are really important to take with your email newsletter. First of all, you have to get it opened, obviously. Then you have to get it read. And it is a challenge. People are so busy to get it opened and read. Once you get people reading, you really want to maximize it and take the opportunity to build relationships. And then when you've done that, you want to track what you're doing, refine it, improve it, repeat it, do it regularly so that, again, you maintain that relationship through regular contact. What we're going to talk about today, I'll speak up a little. So what we're going to talk about today is not a technical seminar, but I'm going to give you some tips about getting opened, and I'm going to give you a few resources that you can use if you want information about testing and tracking and refining. And we're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about getting read and building relationships, what kind of content to use, how to present it, even how to find your stories and get your stories. So that's where we'll spend the bulk of our time. And we'll start with the get opened. And here's another kind of staggering number for you. One article I was reading, they cited a survey by MailChimp International, and they were saying only around 20% of nonprofit emails are actually opened. So if you're at the average, you've got about 2 in 10 chance of getting it open. That's a little worrying, but that said, there are ways, again, to beat those numbers. I think it's amazing how many people aren't doing simple things with their emails that are really easy steps you can take that will significantly improve that. So we're going to talk about those. The first thing you need to do is really look at the front line. Who is this email coming from? You want to make sure it's a real person because, remember, our goal here is to build relationships. And you never want to send it from info at or no reply at, because basically what you're saying is we aren't investing a real person to talk to you as a real person and we don't want to hear back from you. That's obviously not how you start a relationship. So you always want to put it from a real person. And I prefer, if you can, to set it up first name. So if I'm sending it, I want it to be from Karen@mycharity.org. If it's KLatrell@mycharity.org, because that's the way your IT department set things up and they're really fussed about it, I can live with that, but it has to be from a real person. Okay, and then in your subject line, you really want to make it topic specific, not just newsletter or the title of your newsletter, because again, this is the other thing people are going to check, and they're going to give it just a couple of seconds before they decide whether to open it or let it be one of those 8 out of 10 that just gets passed by. So if you use a subject line that really tells the reader what's in it for them, what will they get out of opening it and reading it, and for your donors, there are a lot of things that could really inspire them to open it. It could be that they just really want to know what progress is being made on this cause that they care very much about, that you're helping make change on. But you need to know what's inspiring for your donor.
Hopefully this will improve our sound and you can hear me better. So you need to know what's inspiring for your donor, and make sure that you capture that in the subject line. And again, often it's just, it's giving them credit and telling them about the progress that's happening. But make sure you capture that in the subject line and that you do it very briefly. And this is important. You want to keep it to about 50 characters or less so that it doesn't get cut off. And one, if your subject line gets cut off because it was too long, then obviously you're going to have less chance of capturing their interest. But also sometimes people have had embarrassing mistakes when things get cut off in the wrong place. So you really do want to be careful and, and look at how long those subject lines are. Even though it may take a little bit of your time, it's worth it. Okay? And the other things that I want to just quickly mention about getting your email opened, part of it comes down to when you send it to. And you'll find all different kinds of advice online about when to send, and you really do have to track for your audience when's the best time that they're looking at email. There are some general trends that people will often check email early in the morning and again sort of early in the afternoon. Generally speaking, best not to send them towards the end of the workday when they're trying to get out of the office or at dinner time because they're not going to be particularly interested in your message at that time. But you do really need to check and see what your audience's schedule is like and when you're getting best open rates and adjust to that. Okay? The other thing about getting your email opened is making sure you have a good list to start with. So if you're building an opt-in list according to best practices of people who really want your content and you're maintaining that list and getting rid of dead addresses, then you're going to have a better open rate. And if you have a really bad open rate, you should definitely look at those things because it may just be that you're trying to send your email to the wrong people and you don't need them to open it and you don't need to send it to them. So make sure of that as well. Okay. And you can just take a look at this slide that's up now. I think we've all seen this in our own email inboxes, but you know that there are many messages competing for your attention. And the one I've highlighted sort of second down from the top is an example email that was sent to me this month from one of my favorite organizations. And I just absolutely love this email, so we're going to use it as an example throughout the presentation today. And you can see the subject line they've used. I really like it because it's short. It says International Day of the Girl Child is today. So it tells me it's a topic that I'm interested in, women and girls, and it's something that I'm not going to skip over because I'm busy and say I'll look at tomorrow and then forget about it, because it's happening today. So I'm going to look at it now, take a moment and look at it now. So I think it's an effective subject line for those reasons. Okay. So now you've got your email opened. How do you get people to actually read it? We're going to talk about 6 things that you can do. And I'm going to kind of count those down in reverse order for you. I'm saving the best for last. The first one is design it for legibility. They're all important, but this one's important too. And simple things you can do in this. Sometimes people tend to get carried away because of all of the wonderful things you can do with software. But just because you can do it doesn't necessarily mean that you should. And I think one of the biggest things is dark text on white or very, very light background is going to be the easiest to read. And if it's hard to read, people will just keep going. So don't get too carried away with lots of dark or bright colors as backgrounds. Okay, fine to use that color to highlight a headline, a short piece of text that you really want to stand out, but make sure your body is on dark text on a light color. And again, you can, my next point is to highlight those headings and subheadings with a bright color. Make those really stand out because people do skim read and a lot of people will just read through the headlines and you want it to be easy for them to find those and get your main messages out of them. And break it down into subsections with short bits of manageable text that are brief and easy to scan. Number 5, use photos and captions. In any publication, the photos are one of the things that are most looked at. And the captions are part of the copy that's most read. So don't lose that opportunity in your email. Do put in photos and do put in captions with them. And even those people who only give it a couple of seconds will get your key messages out of the captions as well. Okay. Use language that is simple and easy to read. That's number 4. For me, with a writing background, this is very important to me. So use very simple language. Short sentences. We tend to create complex sentences. Break them up. Look at them and see how many short sentences you can break your one sentence up into. I'm going to say use Anglo-Saxon words over Latin vocabulary. Basically what I mean by that is pick the simplest word possible to say what you mean and go with that. Do absolutely no jargon. Read out all of the terminology. I think it was Imagine Canada has a hilarious video. If you look, you'll for their YouTube channel, you'll find it about jargon, and you can also Google. I think it's the philanthropic jargon generator, and you'll have a good laugh.
Capacity building.
Yeah, it generates these strings, and you're laughing your head off at them. But if you've been in the sector for a little while, you're also looking at them saying, "I've heard that."
I've written that.
Yeah, exactly. So you really want to make sure you weed those out. You want it to be suitable for a person reading in a second language. If you're looking at this and thinking, yes, someone reading it in a second language can read it, then it's also probably very easy to read quickly, which is good for your whole audience. So it's good for many reasons. Again, short chunks of text. And a great practice is to have somebody who's a brand new supporter or outside of your field completely take a look at it for you before you send it out. Okay? So number 3, use great headlines and subheads to capture and keep attention. And we already talked about why that's important, how people read short blocks of text and skim through. So what can you do to create great headlines and subheads? Well, remember your audience goal. What is it that you want them to know or do or think or feel, and make sure that you capture that in the headline. And again, tell them what's in it for me. What are they going to get out of reading this content? And the other thing I'm going to say is with headlines, clever is good, but clear is better. If you can use an interesting sound pattern or language pattern or pun or whatever to capture interest and make it memorable, great, as long as you don't sacrifice clarity. If you can do both, good. If you have to choose one, make it short and clear, because something that clearly says what's the benefit to the reader of taking their time and investing their time to read it is going to perform better for you and get more readers' eyes on your text than something that's clever but not totally clear. Okay, and we're getting down to the bottom of the list here. Number 2, personalize it. And you see I'm saying name and type of support. I think the name is a must. You really want your donor newsletter to go out and say, Dear Karen, Dear Claire, thank you for your support, because you're trying to build a relationship. So I think an absolute must is the name. Some organizations will also personalize it by the type of support. So you may be really trying to encourage these fabulous donors that are giving you a gift a couple times a year through your annual campaign and special appeals to become monthly donors to give you more stable income. If you are, you may want to take the time to really thank people for doing that in the email and customize it so that new monthly donors get a special thank you mention in their version of the email. So that's just one example. There are lots of kinds of things you can do to segment your list and customize the content to groups of donors to make it more relevant and meaningful for them. And one example I've seen that I think is interesting, we had an organization, we were able to segment our list geographically, and we were also able to look at it and see who was forwarding it, like by the level of engagement. So what this allowed us to do was go in and say, we're having a very small sort of personal touch kind of event in Toronto where our head office is located, and we're inviting a certain group of donors to this event to hear directly from people who have been helped and from senior volunteers. And what we're also going to do is go to our email list and to that group that lives in Toronto that has been extensively forwarding our email newsletter, that every time we send it, they send it out to 10 of their friends and family members or more. We're going to invite them in because they're our advocates and our ambassadors, and they're out there spreading the word for us. And we want to give them a personal touch and a personal thank you, and give them more ammunition, more tools to be a really great ambassador for us. So you can use it for that kind of engagement, segment your list, and personalize the kinds of invitations, what you invite people to do as well. Okay, and so we're ready now for number 1, the absolute top thing that you can do to get your email read. And not surprisingly, it's provide really high quality content that donors just want to read, that they're excited to receive. Now, this requires a shift in thinking, so it's not this is what the organization needs to tell donors.
You don't want a letter director?
What? It can be from the executive director if it's personal and it's telling me about how great my support is and how many people are being helped by my support and what a change it's making in society. That's what I want to hear. And I think that's really, really important. And I would say if you're judging, is your content high quality, ask yourself, does it provide value? Does it inform and inspire? Both. Does it create a personal connection? Is it going to help build a relationship with this individual? And if you can answer to those yes to all of those questions, then chances are you're providing really good quality content. And of course, we're going to talk a little bit more about how to do this. And you'll notice that what I'm saying here is quality content builds relationships, and we keep coming back to this theme of relationships, right, which is at the key of donor retention. So you will see that I've been really impressed by this presentation by Tom Ahern. It was for a past AFP Congress, and he really summed it up the best I've ever heard it said in terms of you need to give donor love. We were talking about how to talk to donors and create connection and goodwill, and I think it's just a really great way to think of it. So, what do I mean by building relationships and giving donor love? Personally, what I mean by that is say thank you early and often. So this isn't just in the beginning, thank you, and then at the end when we sign off and say thank you again. When we look at the sample email from Canadian Women's Foundation, you're going to see just how often and how many different ways they actually say thank you and give you, the donor, credit. And it's quite powerful. You also want to speak directly to a single donor. And again, we said we're going to start off with Dear Claire, Dear Karen, and you want to continue in that vein. You're always speaking to you, and you use you and your, not us and our or we. And that's very important. We'll look at some actual language samples in just a minute. You also want to tell stories that show how your donor made a difference. Okay? And you want to use numbers but with care. And what I want to say here is you don't want to use large numbers that overwhelm the donor and make them think that the problem is insurmountable. If you give them huge numbers of people that need to be helped, people may feel like, well, my little contribution can't make a dent. So you have to be careful about that. And donors like to give to sort of one person, not hundreds or thousands or millions of people. So again, it's about creating that connection. It is, I think, good to, when you're informing donors, to tell them how many people have been helped and give them the sense that, a difference is being made for a good number of people. Just be careful how much you rely on numbers and that you don't overwhelm them about the need. Okay? And also you want to use two-way communication. And we talked a little bit about this with the event example, where you invite people to come out and participate. But there are lots of other ways to use two-way communication too, so that you really are building the relationship by getting a conversation going back and forth and using your email as a way to start that process and support it and keep it going. Okay, and again, we'll come back to some more examples and details of that. We're going to go back to the language samples you can use for creating your donor love and building relationships. Right? Thank you, because you helped. Your gift made the difference. You helped prevent. You helped build. Your investment did this. Your support. Your generosity. You made it possible. You helped so many people. And there are many, many different ways to do essentially this, to use the you and give credit to the donor. And I really encourage you to become familiar with them, because you want to be, I've given you, 5 or 6, and you probably want to be using at least 5 or 6 in each email that you send. So really become familiar with those. And also using that kind of language helps you get your head in the space of talking about the people and the progress and not talking about the organization and talking directly to your donor. A good resource, it's a classic book. It's been around for quite a while, but I think it's still a great one. It's How to Write Successful Fundraising Letters by Mal Warwick, and he actually has an appendix in there, 90 ways to use the word you in a fundraising letter. And while it's written about fundraising letters, it's the same kind of language that you want to see in your donor e-newsletter, so it's really worth taking a look at that. And the other thing I always encourage people to do is take a look at the Showcase of Fundraising, Innovation, and Inspiration at SOFI.org. And there was one example that I really liked that stood out for me. It was actually an example of a postcard that's being sent to help with donor retention. And I just thought they did a good example of using that language and keeping it very brief, obviously, because it's on a postcard. So again, it's a different format, but it's the same kind of things you're looking for in your email, with that brief, telling a story, and giving the donor credit and using you. So we're going to go back to the email example for just a minute. And you can see at the top an example of exactly what we said. It's personalized with the donor name, Dear Karen. And then as you go down, just a short distance down into the email, they're giving the donor credit. To celebrate, here are a few examples of how you are helping to empower girls in Canada today and every day. And then right below that, the headline for the next piece of content, your investment in girls. So it's personal, and I'm being credited for my support right away. Okay. So we mentioned that for building relationships, you want to tell great stories. So let's talk about that a little bit. I think my experience doing communications for charities is that those great stories of how people have been helped are so important, and they can be one of the hardest things to actually get as a communicator inside the organization. So let's talk about the kind of stories and what you can do to get them, how you can go about finding them. And I think definitely you want stories of people helped. You also want to tell stories of donors and volunteers. And it shows how much you value them. And it also can be aspirational. So if you tell a story about a donor we used this example earlier, who's gone to monthly giving and what that means for your organization, it may inspire other donors to say, hey, I can do that, and I want to be able to help in that way. So it gives a sense that you really appreciate donors, and it may be aspirational and help you further specific fundraising goals too. So also I want to talk a little bit about point of view. When you're telling stories of people helped, sometimes you'll tell them in the third person, like you'll interview them and you'll do a profile, and that can be very effective. There are some tricks to how you do that, so we'll talk about those. The other thing you can do is sometimes you're able to actually get them to tell the story in their words, first person. And when you can do that, it can be tricky, but when you can do that, it is so effective. It can be really, really powerful. And again, it gets you out of that talking about the organization. It's all from the person's perspective, and you really get the feeling of the change that has happened. So, and especially if you're using video and you're driving people to video or including video in your email, that's a great way to do it. So when we talked about interviewing people and doing sort of a third-person profile on people helped. Now, how do you get those stories? And that was always the starting point for me was, how do we actually get those great stories? And sometimes what I found, and I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but the program staff that are working with people can be very protective. And sometimes maybe there's a bit of a sense that they're worried about having you interview the people that have been helped and share their stories. And they're concerned that maybe the people won't be treated properly or that it won't be a good experience for them. And it can be, it can be a little bit difficult. And my advice on that is to hang in there, to keep talking to your program staff and letting them know the things that you're going to do, that you're going to put in place to make sure it's a good experience for people when they're interviewed. And build trust with those program staff, because they really are your best source of stories, being able to point out specific people who have a good story, who are also in a place where they're ready to share it. And some of the things that you can do to build that trust and make sure it's a good experience when you're interviewing, you want to start off the interview by telling people, putting them at ease and letting them know that they don't have to answer any questions they don't want to, that they're in control of the interview, and you have to honor that. It's very different if you have a sort of journalist background from that kind of interview. So I think that's really important. And the other thing that's very different from sort of a journalist type of background is that you really want to offer to have that person look at the story before you publish it, because you never know what is going to trigger something for them based on their emotional experience that you wouldn't have expected and couldn't anticipate. So it's really important to give them the opportunity to look at it before it's published. And the other thing that I've done is I've offered to have program staff who were recommending someone to tell their story come and be part of the interview process to help make it really comfortable for that person that's sharing their story, because they're with the person they know that's helped them through the program. Okay, so those are just a few tips that might help, and I would say in terms of sources of story, talk to your program staff. Also, look at evaluation forms. Most charities will have some kind of evaluation forms for programs for people who've participated, and you may find a really great source of quotes and stories, and find someone that you can contact and see if they're willing to share their story by simply reading through those stacks of program evaluations. Okay? Great. So questions to ask when you're interviewing to get a really great story. I think we always want to ask how the person's life has changed, but don't forget also to ask about their future plans. When someone's been through a process and they're becoming strong, their life is going in a new direction, it's a very exciting time for them to be thinking about what's next, and it can be very inspiring to share what they're planning to do now. And also don't forget to ask how things have changed for their friends and family and loved ones, because there's almost always this ripple effect where you've helped a person who's been in a program or part of your organization in some way. But when their life gets better, the life of other people around them gets better, and that's something to capture in your stories as well. And I like to end interviews when I'm doing this kind of a profile by asking the person what they would like to say to supporters. And you, with that simple question, you can get a very powerful short quotation of this person speaking directly to your donor, and that's really great to have and to include. So we mentioned that you want to build action through two-way communication. And so we'll just talk very quickly about a few of the things that you can do in your newsletter to do that. You can share key messages and information with, and ask people to share them with their friends, family, and colleagues to increase awareness. So just sharing that awareness message is an easy thing to do in your newsletter, and asking people to forward it gets them engaged as a first step. You can ask them to watch a video success story and forward it. You could ask them to participate in a cause marketing partnership if you're doing that kind of work with corporate partners. You can ask them to read your blog post or a discussion on Facebook and to share their opinion on issues. You can ask them to include a button with the link to your campaign page or your website homepage on their blog or their website. You can ask them to submit short quotations or videos about why they support your cause, and that's a way to get them involved and generate very powerful content to continue sharing with donors. And you can also ask them to complete a short survey and tell you information about what tools will help them be super ambassadors for your organization. So those are all sort of simple things you can do as part of a series of actions that get people involved and more engaged. Okay? And also I just want to make one last point, which is it's important to integrate this with other channels. And in terms of building a relationship, it can be a little bit jarring if you're getting one message through email and a different message on the Facebook page and a different message in the direct mail campaign and other messages yet again in the annual report. So you just want to integrate it with other channels and make sure that, that the core messaging is consistent and feels the same. Okay? So we're going to go back to our sample email, the email from Canadian Women's Foundation that gives us tons of donor love. And you can see again, we were looking at that section that was started with your investment in girls. So it speaks directly to the individual donor and credits her. And then it goes down and it says, however, between the ages of 9 and 13, many girls face serious challenges, including high rates of sexual assault, and it goes on. But it very briefly educates the donor and defines the problem for them in just a sentence. Okay? Then it goes on to explain the solution, but it does it in a way that credits the donor. It doesn't talk about the organization does this. It says your investment is supporting community programs for girls. And then you go on again. It's very brief for email. You go on and at the end, there's more credit to the donor yet again with in the link to deeper information. So it's find out more about your support, how your support empowers girls in Canada to move into confidence. And notice they've got your support emphasized, right? That's the emphasis. So the next section of their content uses that video we were talking about, and I think they've done an effective job of using a question in the headline and as the theme of the video for engaging people. And again, it creates that direct conversation and gets you thinking about how you would answer the question. And I would encourage you to watch the video if you have the chance. And again, you can Google Canadian Women's Foundation International Day of the Girl Constant Contact, and you'll find the archive page, and you can watch the actual video and look at the whole thing. But I think it does a really good job of showing sort of positive change through the eyes and the words of women and girls who are actually involved in the programs, whether they're participants or they're helping put the program on. And so I think it's very effective. And then finally we get to the bottom part where they tell that story, that third-person story, Emily's story, through the eyes of the girl, the real girl, and at the end, again, they give credit to the donor for the solution. So find out how the program you supported helped change Emily's life. And then they go into the closing, and it's every day you help to empower girls in Canada, and thank you for making a difference. So twice more, and then a personal signature, right? And it's not just signed in text. It's an actual image of a handwritten signature that feels much like you get in a letter. And so when you look at this email in its entirety, I haven't counted, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's close to a dozen times when they're saying thank you or crediting the donor throughout it. And by the end of it, you certainly feel appreciated. You feel like your contribution has made a difference. You're not sitting there with that nagging feeling in the back of your mind that I only contributed a little bit, and I don't know if my little bit makes a difference. You certainly feel like you're part of something bigger and you're appreciated, and it's important that you keep doing it, important to the organization and to the people helped. So I think this is the kind of tone that will really help you with donor retention. And I'll point out two more little things in the bottom of their email that are small but helpful and important. They've actually included their charitable registration number, so please do that. I think that helps build trust, and it's important to put it in there. And they've got the forward email. And you may want to make the forward this to a friend request even larger, but they've got an automatic little forward email down there. So that's my example of one of the emails, donor emails, that I've received lately that I really liked. It's one of my favorites. And we're going to go quickly to the refine and repeat step number 4. Okay, and I'm going to give you a couple of resources for this. We talked in the beginning and we said it's really important to listen, and that's partly the two-way communication that we were talking about, to hear what people are saying. When you've asked for feedback and started a conversation, make sure you don't ignore and that you do actually listen and acknowledge what you're getting. And then test and track. And there are some resources to use to do this. If you want information on how to do split testing with your email, marketingprofs.com is a site that writes quite frequently about how to do split testing and different results of split testing they've done for email. And what I mean here by split testing, if you're not familiar with it, is you can take key elements of your email that we've talked about, like your subject line and your from line and the headlines in your email, and you can take one element at a time and test it. And you take a small portion of your email list, and you take one subject line and you send it to half of that, and you take another subject line and you send it to the other half, and you see which of the two performs better, and that's the one you send to your full list. And when you do that kind of testing, you test initially before you send to your full list to get the best results for that email, but you also look for trends in the results of those tests to improve what you're doing with the key elements of your newsletter all of the time going forward. And so marketingprofs.com is a resource for that. And any resources for sort of tracking and measuring online marketing, I would say look at TechSoup. And TechSoup Canada blog has done some posts on measuring social media, and they've shared some spreadsheets. But the same kind of format that you're seeing there can be applied to the things that you want to track in your emails. And again, from subject line, headlines, and even use of photos are good things to test and track and watch to help you improve the effectiveness of your email. And so just a quick summary. We've talked about a lot of things, but what I would say is you want to make your donor e-newsletter brief, frequent so that you're staying in touch with them regularly, easy to read, personal. It has to be informative, but it also has to be emotional and connect on an emotional level. And I would say perhaps most important, you want it to be overflowing with gratitude to the donor. Okay? And there's a resource slide here of articles and reading. A lot of them are specifically for emails, but some of them are more general on design, photo use, concepts that can be applied to your email newsletter and other materials as well. And that is the core of my presentation today. So thank you very much, and we'll open it up to questions.